Welcome back to another episode of the K-Swap 240, where today we are going to make some more jam by installing some cams from Drag Cartel. If you watched our previous episode on this car, you know we've already baselined it on a Mustang dyno with our buddy Nick from Tuning by Nick. And that's so that when we drop these DC cams in, these are their 2.2 cams, which our buddy Ben at Gears and Gasoline used in his K-Swapped EK hatchback, and he made a pile of horsepower. So we're hoping to replicate those results with these cams. And of course, we've got a bunch of supporting mods to go with them, including SuperTech valve train. We've got a 50-degree VTC gear from a K20. And of course, we mentioned in the previous episode too that we're going to swap in a K-Miata intake manifold. So we're making some changes associated with that as well that you'll see with the fuel rail and injector. So with that said, I think it's time to pop the valve cover on this thing, pull those stock cams out, and drop these bad boys in there. By the way, we shot a very detailed how to swap K-Series camshaft video with Rui at K-Tuned a couple of years ago when we originally did the K-Swapped EK Coupe. So if you want very detailed instructions how to do that, go watch that video. It's really well done. It's got every step in there. In fact, we're going to use it ourselves to guide us through this process because it's been a few years, but it's one of the easiest cam swaps you can do. So we're just going to power through this and you can watch along. And like I said, go check out that other one for more detail. Now that we've pulled the cams out, we are ready to change out the valve springs, the valve retainers, the valve seats, and even the keepers, all of which we've sourced from SuperTech. So we'll give you a close look at that now. Before I get into the nitty-gritty here, I should mention the reason we're upgrading the valve train is because the Drag Cartel cams are so aggressive, they need a stiffer spring to support that higher lift and duration. Otherwise, you'd run into like crazy valve float situations. It just wouldn't be good. So for that, we have gone to the SuperTech dual spring setup. And as you can see here, it is, as the name would imply, 2 springs. And it's also quite a bit larger in diameter than the factory spring, but it does fit down there in the hole, but it requires a different valve seat. So you can see it's got a stepped valve seat, one for the larger diameter spring and one for the narrower or smaller diameter spring. On top, we are equipping it with these titanium retainers. And of course, the advantage of a titanium retainer is the reduction in weight on the top of the valve, which can help a lot with, first of all, limiting valve float, but also valve train stability. They're really valuable that way. They do tend to wear faster than steel ones though, so it's not necessarily recommended for street use. I know lots of guys who do run them on street motors and get good mileage and wear out of them, but because they're a little softer than the springs will sort of gall the seats over time. So if you're expecting to run these for like 100,000 or 200,000 kilometers, you may want to go with the steel ones, which of course SuperTech does offer. But if you're building a race motor or really want like a high performance motor that you're going to watch closely, then titanium is the way to go. They do require these 7-degree keepers that SuperTech includes. And that's sort of if I pull one out of here, you can see how they're angled at 7 degrees. And that locks the keeper in there, the retainer in there properly. And they've also supplied these valve seals because when we're pulling everything out, why not put in fresh seals?
So what we've got going on here is I have our OTC cylinder leak down tester hooked up, which is pumping compressed air into the combustion chamber, which is holding up our valves. And now I've got our Lyle valve spring and retainer removal tool. And what I'm gonna do is just drop it down here on the retainer, give it a quick tap, and it's as easy as that. There it is. I can take the spring off and now we can put on the SuperTech stuff. If you watched the M3 valve seal removal episode, you'll know that I didn't have a proper set of valve seal removal pliers. Now I do, and these make life so much easier. So all I do is clamp down, pull up, and there it goes. And as you saw there, that's the actual valve seat down there that fell. So I'll pull that out as well here. All right, now we can put on the SuperTech stuff. I've popped the valve seat on and the valve seal, so now come the springs. So they are on there as such, and what I've done is I've taken the titanium retainer here and put the clips in there, and what I'm going to do is drop this on and now get the tool, and we should be able to just punch that back down. There it is. First pop, and it is on. Look at the difference on the SuperTech stuff versus the stock stuff. This is gonna allow us to rev. Everything was moving along here real smooth, and then we hit a roadblock. So this this rocker arm assembly, we were just lifting up the rocker arms, being able to access the valve springs and whatnot until we hit this one, and there's a weird piece of metal right here that is contacting the valve spring and retainer, so we cannot get this guy off, which means now we've got to remove this whole rocker arm assembly. And there's two 10mm bolts on the back side, and what you got to do is just kind of like pry up here, back and forth in the back here too. Okay, time to pull off this rocker arm assembly. It's actually a pretty neat setup. I don't think I've ever seen it on any other motor, but yeah, these are all individual. If I could separate this, if I let it go and kind of pulled these pieces off. With the rocker assembly off, I've got to admit it is much easier to do this job, so it may be something you want to do. We were in a rush, so obviously we didn't want to remove it, but after consulting with some Honda experts, they do say, as you can see, it's much easier, and it's not that difficult to take that rocker arm assembly off, and then now you have such easy access to everything. So certainly something to consider. If you're doing the job, you can leave that on, because that weird little piece of metal that we had doesn't seem like it's normal. It seems like it's an uncommon thing, so you should be able to do the job with the rocker assembly on. However, if you're still keen on removing it, go for it. Our SuperTech valve train is in, and man, it is so awesome having the right tools for this job. This is probably the first time in a long time I've done this and not had to really fiddle with it. So make sure you're buying the right tools. And as you can see, the SuperTech valves look pretty awesome in here. This is going to be a big part of us being able to maximize those cams. Speaking of which, that's the next part. So it's time to put this stuff back in.
All right, it is finally time to install our Drag Cartel 2.2 cams. These are the first step up from their drop-in cams, which don't require this valve train upgrade. These, of course, do because of the much higher duration that these have. I believe it's advertised 304 on the intake and 300 on the exhaust. All the specs are on their website. And we know, like I mentioned off the top, that these are going to make good power. It's worth mentioning that they are made out of a very high-quality 8620 steel billet, and they are CNC ground on a special cam grinding machine, and they're exceptionally rigid, so there'll be no deflection happening in them, which will give you really good valve train stability. And man, they have so much lift that, of course, we needed those 92-pound dual valve spring setup. So on their website, on Drag Cartel's website, they recommend this exact valve train setup, so that's why we've opted for this. You could, of course, use others, but why not use what they recommend? They obviously know their cams better than anybody else. Oh, one last thing we should mention is we have switched to an RBC 50-degree VDC gear here, rather than the RBB 25-degree one that comes with the K24 motors. However, you do need to limit this electronically to about 40 degrees maximum. If you go over 40 degrees, you can start to run into piston to valve contact. So make sure you know what you're doing. If you swap to this, you got to tune appropriately. In fact, in the old days, I ran a physical limiter inside this gear that would not allow it to advance past 40 degrees. But we spoke with Nick, our tuner, and he said, don't worry, I've just simply electronically limit them to 40 degrees, and I've never had a problem. So we're going to trust our tuner on that and pop these in the motor.
Cams are in, we've checked our timing, it is all good. So the final job that we need to do is adjust the valve lash, and for that you want a special tool like this. And with these being manually adjusted, what you do is you come in here and you hold this and you crack it loose. And now what I usually do is, I've already checked this one and it's actually a little bit loose, so I think we're shooting for 8 thou on this side here. And as you can see now, I've tightened it where 9 thou won't fit, so let's go to 8. So 8 thou isn't even fitting, so I'm gonna loosen this up just a tad here. Let's see, just turn it a little bit. Let's see what happens. There we go. Now it's just got a little bit of drag. Perfect. So I'm going to tighten it up, and that's where this tool really does come in handy, because you can hold it in place and tighten it as such without actually getting any type of rotation, so you won't have to go back and readjust.
All right, valve lash is adjusted, so we're just going to throw the valve cover on here to protect the engine while we move on to removing the intake.
And for those of you that don't know, we have an S2000 intake manifold on here, and we are going to upgrade to K-Miata's one that we've been assured flows better. It's going to make some more jams, so why not go to it? And it's going to get rid of a lot of those adapters, right, Dave?
Yeah, it'll simplify the whole intake setup, and we are going to have to switch out the fuel rail and injectors to be compatible with that K-Miata intake, so let's get cracking. As you can see, the S2000 manifold is off, and it is a bummer not to be using the radium stuff because it is so nice, but don't worry everybody, we will repurpose it, including these ID injectors. These are 1000 speed or 1050s?
I don't recall, yeah.
I think they might be the 1050s.
Yeah, they sadly aren't going to fit with the new K fuel rail that we need to use.
Yeah, the K injectors are taller and stuff. We could have repurposed them with different seats, I think, but makes sense just to put the RDX injectors in because it's appropriately sized for an NA motor. Well everyone, we may have gotten a little ahead of ourselves pulling off the S2000 manifold because we didn't actually have that K-Miata manifold in our hands yet, and I was actually planning to go down this afternoon to pick it up in Niagara Falls, and lo and behold, FedEx seems to have lost it. So we're in a bit of a hard situation right now. We're not sure if they're going to find it or not, and if they don't find it, K-Miata is out of stock, so we might be in for a bit of a wait before we can actually finish this off and get back to the dyno and get to those dyno numbers. But on the other hand, with any luck, FedEx may track it down, they may deliver it tomorrow or the next day or the day after that. Who knows? So we're in a bit of a waiting pattern here to find out what exactly happened to that manifold. I sure hope we don't have to wait like a month for K-Miata to get more stock in, but in the meantime, this car is going to be down waiting for that manifold to show up, so that means this is an unexpected wrap on this episode. Hope you did find it interesting and maybe even useful, seeing how we did that whole cam swap. And in the next episode, you will see us install that K-Miata manifold and then head to the dyno and get you those dyno numbers. So thanks for watching, everyone, and we'll see you in the next one. Yeah, that's the problem. He needed a lot of weight on it.